How do you build a multi-billion-dollar empire, especially in one of the world's most dynamic and complex economies? Well, today we're cracking open the playbook of a company that's done exactly that, Saratoga Investma Sedaya. I mean, that's the question, right? And it's one Saratoga has spent decades figuring out. So how did they pull it off? How did they manage to thrive where so many others have struggled? All right, let's jump right in and see. Okay, so here's how we're going to tackle this. First, we'll set the scene with Indonesia's economy. Then, we'll get into the Saratoga blueprint itself. After that, we'll see how that blueprint turned into billions. We'll also peek behind the curtain at their rules of the game. And finally, we'll pull back and look at the bigger picture. Okay, let's kick things off with Section 1, Indonesia's economic engine. To really get a handle on a company like Saratoga, you first have to understand the world they're playing in. And wow, is it a complex and fast-moving one? You see, Indonesia isn't just your average emerging market. It's an absolute powerhouse of growth. And it's incredibly resilient. I mean, just think about it. With all the craziness going on in the world back in 2022, the economy still managed to grow by a solid 5.3%. That kind of strength, that's the bedrock you need if you're going to make smart, long-term bets. And right away, you start to see their discipline. Saratoga isn't trying to boil the ocean here. They don't try to be everything to everyone. Nope, their strategy is laser-focused on the three things that really make Indonesia's economy hum: natural resources, infrastructure, and the consumer market. By zeroing in on these pillars, they get a massive leg up. So that brings us to Section 2, the Saratoga blueprint. How do they actually take that focus and turn it into a winning strategy? Now, this is super important to get. Saratoga is not just some passive investor writing checks from an ivory tower. They're what's called an active investment company. And that basically means they get their hands dirty. They roll up their sleeves. They don't just bring cash to the table. They bring in operational know-how, financial advice, you name it, all to help their companies get stronger from the inside. And their whole process is actually beautifully simple. It's this three-step cycle. First, they invest. They go out and find those promising companies, whether they're just starting out or already established. Then comes the grow phase. That's where they put that active, hands-on approach to work. And finally, step 3, monetize. They figure out the smartest way to cash in on all that value they helped build, maybe through an IPO or a sale. It's simple, it's disciplined, and man, is it effective. Okay, so that's the blueprint. But does it actually work? Well, that's what Section 3 is all about. Let's get into the results and the numbers. So you have this disciplined strategy, right? Invest, grow, monetize. And after years of doing this over and over, the result? Well, let's just say it's been pretty massive. Bam, there it is. 53.9 trillion rupiah. That was their net asset value at the end of 2024. Now, to put that into perspective for you, that's around 3.4 billion US dollars. We're talking about a truly massive portfolio. And the crazy part, it's still growing. And yeah, it's definitely not standing still. In just a single year, from 2023 to 2024, that net asset value, which is basically the company's total net worth, jumped by 10.5%. That is some serious growth. It's proof positive that their value creation engine is just firing on all cylinders. So that leads to a really important question. I mean, where does all this value actually come from? A 54 trillion rupiah portfolio sounds amazing, but where's the cash? How does it turn into real, tangible income? Well, a huge piece of the puzzle is dividend income, the cash that their portfolio companies pay out. Just look at these numbers. Their investment in the energy giant Alarmtree Resources, that alone brought in over 3 trillion rupiah in dividends. That's up a whopping 46% from the year before. All told, their total dividend income shot up by 36%. This is the blueprint in action. You invest in solid, profitable companies, and they generate real, cold, hard cash. All right, moving on to Section 4, the rules of the game. So how on earth do they manage all this? What's going on behind the scenes that makes this whole machine run so smoothly? So who's managing this multi-trillion rupiah portfolio? You're probably picturing a giant skyscraper filled with hundreds, maybe thousands of analysts, right? Just a huge army of people crunching numbers 24/7. Well, the reality is going to surprise you. Get this. 65. Just 65 people. I'm not kidding, I had to read that twice.
An entire team that could comfortably fit in one big conference room is steering a multi-billion-dollar ship. That's not just surprising, it's mind-blowing. It tells you everything you need to know about the insane efficiency and the disciplined structure they've built.
And what's really cool is that this small, super effective team is also incredibly balanced. It's almost a perfect 50-50 split between men and women. You've got 34 women, 31 men. That really says something about their culture, you know? It feels modern, it feels dynamic. So the big question is, how do they do it? How does a team that small manage so much responsibility? Well, it all boils down to two things: discipline and culture. They have this rock-solid system for managing risk, and it creates a culture where everyone, and I mean everyone, is risk-aware. It just goes to show, it's not about the size of the army, it's about having the smartest playbook. Okay, for our final section, let's pull back and look at the bigger picture. Because this story is about more than just big numbers on a balance sheet. What does it all mean for the future of Indonesia? And this quote from the president-director, Michael Sorijaya, I think it just perfectly sums everything up. He talks about teamwork, discipline, and this unwavering focus on long-term value. You can tell this isn't just some generic corporate slogan they put on a poster. It's truly at the heart of how they operate day in and day out. And that right there is really the key takeaway. By being so strategic, by funneling both money and expertise into those key sectors we talked about, resources, infrastructure, consumer goods, Saratoga is doing so much more than just making a profit. They're basically acting as economic architects, helping to design and build a stronger, more sustainable future for the entire country. Which really leaves us with one final big question to think about. Saratoga's whole playbook is a masterclass in discipline and thinking for the long haul. In a world that is so obsessed with short-term gains and quick wins, what's the real cost? And what's the real reward of building something that's meant to last?